we want to highlight our New Yorkers for New York campaign, where showing up, planting seeds, working together, networking, community, and humanity are the order of the day and frame everything that we are about here at Citizens NYC and everything that we do. So sit back and enjoy the video.
I feel like it's important every day to show up as your authentic self because you have something of value to add as an individual that somebody else can never bring to the table. And if you hide that talent, then how will the world be able to have solutions that can better and move us forward as a society? I was inspired to start Seeds of Fortune because of the struggles that I had with trying to finance my college education. So when you look at the seeds, right, it's not just one seed, but it's all of these seedlings are planting in their communities too. We have Rebecca Salters, she's 1 year above the class of 2021. She's working in Detroit right now for Chrysler, but she was a STEM girl. She is going to do STEM programs inside of Detroit high schools so that other girls can learn about STEM. So once the pandemic took its full effect in the spring of 2020, we were ready to service the girls across New York City and help them with their college application process. So now we have the Seed Online College Prep Network that encompasses girls all across the city that are able to access online information on college affordability, financial literacy, as well as their professional development skills.
Between March and June 2020, we've had some of the toughest moments that our city has ever seen. But what I learned during this time is that we are truly a resilient city with resilient people. Our healthcare workers were and are truly amazing. They showed up to work without fail during a time when we didn't know much about the coronavirus at all. Our essential workers, from transit workers to grocery store workers, emergency responders, our teachers, everyone was pushed to their boundaries, but collectively, they all stood tall and they showed what New York City is all about. So there really wasn't just one moment for me, but it was really their actions during our darkest hour that proved just how much New Yorkers love our city, our fellow citizens, and our neighbors, and all New Yorkers appreciated that dedication and commitment. I'm just encouraged that, by working together, we're going to help our city not just rebound and recover, but we're going to bounce back stronger than ever.
So as a native Brooklynite, my hope for the future of New York City is that we are coming back more resilient, more resources. I think the pandemic really taught us how to be human again. Now we're coming back stronger than ever, and I'm so excited about what the future of New York City has, but also I feel like it was an opportunity for New York to rethink some of the inequities that we had, and I think during the pandemic it showed kind of the cracks in our system, and I feel like we kind of banded together as a community to be able to say, you know what, this is how we want to do things differently in the future. This is how we want to see education implemented throughout the 5 boroughs, and how can we do better in making sure that everybody has equal access to resources. So I see the future is bright for New York.
So thank you for that. And now I want to introduce our featured speaker for today. I am the host, I'm Dr. Leslie, and I'm the Director of Community Relations here at Citizen. And we are joined today by Carlos Martinez, Director for New York City Parks Green Thumb. And today we're going to learn about, among other things, the history of New York City community gardens and their role in environmental justice, people, power, and collective action to combat historic disenfranchisement, And so I'm going to toss to our featured speaker for today, Carlos Martinez. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Leslie. And thanks to the entire team at Citizens Committee for New York City for this invitation and for the support to all New Yorkers. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Earth Week. My name is Carlos Martinez, and I am the director of NYC Parks Green Thumb. Green Thumb is the community gardening program of the New York City Parks Department, and our mission is to support gardeners and urban farmers who care for over 550 community gardens across the 5 boroughs. To understand community gardening and urban farming, we have to look into our past. First, I want to acknowledge that we are on the historic land of the Lenape peoples, and we pay respect to their past, present, and future while we continue to be the stewards of this land. This slide depicts Manhattan Island in the 16th century, and here we can see the relationship with the land, the water, and the surrounding environment. Now on this map of the Lower Manhattan from 1762, we see the active farm started by the Dutch. And on this map of 1836, it shows farms in what are now the East 50s. The map indicates the property is owned by different well-known families. Also, since the early 1900s and throughout the 1930s, New Yorkers farm in public spaces through different initiatives to provide food for themselves. These historical snapshots show us that New York is no stranger to agriculture, and the intention here was to highlight those relationships with the land. Today, urban agriculture exists in many forms in New York City, from partnerships between the government and community groups to nonprofits and commercial initiatives. Some examples include community gardens, the school gardening program, farms and gardens in public housing and NYCHA, commercial farms, rooftop, and vertical farming. Now let's talk about the community gardens. Most of these gardens were created more than 40 years ago, when New York was a very different place. The city was in a fiscal crisis in the 1970s, and it was struggling to provide basic services, and there was widespread disinvestment and abandonment of private and public property. And this disinvestment had a profound impact on diverse neighborhoods already affected by redlining. And this is one of the reasons we have a large concentration of gardens in specific areas of the city. Here we can see gardens across the 5 boroughs, from the South Bronx, Harlem, Bed-Stuy to East New York. Then, in an act of self-determination, New Yorkers came together to clear out these vacant lots. And among the many things they did was plant gardens and create small urban farms. Shortly after, Green Thumb was founded in 1978 to provide support to gardeners and farmers. It was originally intended to be a temporary program, but 4 decades later, Green Thumb is still going strong. And this is thanks to our dedicated gardener volunteers and greening partners who continue to advocate to protect these public spaces. Today, we have 554 Green Thumb gardens cared by over 20,000 volunteers, and these gardens account for more than 100 acres of public space. In other words, combined, that would be 75 football fields. Now let's look at some examples. Here we can see a typical food-producing garden in Brooklyn. While there's growing interest for food production, garden groups make those decisions. And here we see an example of a garden in the Lower East Side planned exclusively for passive recreation. Gardens also implement sustainable practices and green infrastructure projects, from composting, rainwater collection system to organic food production. There are also urban farms, and they play a critical role in providing access to fresh food in areas known as food deserts or food apartheid neighborhoods. Gardens also serve as outdoor laboratories and offer teaching opportunities for young people. Gardens are also places for artistic and cultural expression, and every garden is different, as you can see, and they reflect the diversity of each neighborhood and their stewards. Green Thumb support these gardens in multiple ways, from providing gardening supplies and resources throughout the year, from lumber, soil, compost, wood chips, mulch. We also host seasonal distribution of supplies to all our gardeners, and that include native plants and flowers and plant stars and veggies for them to grow in those spaces. Green Thumb also supports gardens through public programs, workshops, trainings, and technical assistance. We're currently celebrating Earth Week, and we're hosting the second part of our Grow Together conference this week. So I hope you can join us this week as well. We offer every year more than 150 educational workshops and trainings. And these trainings and workshops are open to everyone and free of charge. Finally, there are multiple ways to get involved with community gardens. I encourage you to visit your local community garden. We have a very handy map on our website, or you can join as a garden member. Also, you can volunteer in a garden for work days and episodic events, or if you are up to the challenge, you can start a new garden in your neighborhood. Thank you. The website is down there in the slide. Please visit us when you get a chance, and thank you for the time.
So that was an awesome presentation, and thank you so much, Carlos. Definitely appreciate it. And you know what I love so much about this is it coincides with spring, where nature is in full bloom. For those of us who have allergies, we may not be so celebratory of it, but it brings a sense of hope, awakening, a sense of life. And when I even think about your presentation and the conversation today, some of humanity's beginnings have their beginnings in the narrative in a garden, right? Where everything that humanity needed was in a garden. And so, just want to hop to some of the questions that I have for you based on your presentation. So what sparked your passion in working in, the environmental field and growing and conservation and the like?
Thank you, Leslie. That's a really great question. I'm very passionate what I do today, but also we need to reflect about my past. I was born and raised in Colombia, and my relationship with the land and with my local environment informed my decision to go into the environmental, or to explore a career in the environmental field. I was surrounded by mountains, and the easy access to the outdoors opened my eyes. And also my family has a farming tradition. So I was in close proximity, and also like every day for me, it was easy. While I was living in a city, access to the natural environment was very easy. That's how I pursue a career. I study environmental administration in Colombia, and I was very passionate about the role of parks and public spaces back then. Then I moved here to New York, and I had the opportunity to work with different organizations that work with public spaces and in the environmental field. So I was very privileged. And then I also did a master's in urban planning as well. And all these experiences like inform me, like, and it goes in me, that passion about the how can we work with between communities, public spaces, and their local environment. I think the intersection of all that, that's where my passion is, and that's kind of like it's been informing my trajectory in the last few years.
So definitely, thank you for that. And I think that it's amazing to draw your inspiration from the land. That to me is just beautiful. So another question that I have for you is, how do you define and engage with community?
Thank you, Lacey. That's a really good question. It's very difficult to define community, but for me, it is like building relationships. It's all about building those relationships, and that goes building those relationships at the heart of your family, building relationships with your neighbors in your own like community, building relationships in your own building where you live, and that's the beauty of community gardens. Like community gardens are different public space, and it's intended to build community. And as when you enter a community garden, you feel welcome. The gardeners and farmers are very welcoming people, and they're willing to show you the space around and tell you stories. And it's all about that, building those relationships, building a network of people that you can rely on. And also the idea of, in the last few years, Grintham specifically has been more transitioning and not doing more of outreach is important, don't get me wrong, but I think it's about engagement. Transitioning from outreach to engagement is about building those relationships with partners, the stakeholders, and the community. So that's the important part there, and the differences. And then that's how we're looking at Grintham specifically, kind of like we're building relationships at the very local level. And we want to continue doing that.
So that's awesome. I love especially the focus on engagement, because the relationships, pretty much are there. And what I love so much also is the relationship, not only with people, but people recognizing and really respecting the relationship with the land. If we don't support and engage properly in that, then we lose out as a community, as a race, because then where are we going to live? So my next question for you is, how has the pandemic impeded but also helped you pivot and help your work to flourish? And the pun is intended.
Yeah, the pandemic still is a very difficult. It's a very difficult time for all of us. Also for our team here in Grintham. During the pandemic, during the lockdowns, my team was deemed essential. So we never stopped serving our gardeners, for example. So we had our operations team continue serving these gardeners across the 5 boroughs. So we did a lot of like direct deliveries. There was a lot of support to the gardeners, because we knew that these spaces were also essential to them and essential to those local neighborhoods. That's how we deliver enormous amount of like soil, compost, seeds. We scale up like the distribution of native plants, and also like fruit producing plants, especially. As you know, like food access during the pandemic, it was very difficult for many communities. And also speaks about this history of like redlining and very racist policies, and the role of gardens in addressing those issues. So we were very committed to support our gardeners on that regard. I couldn't do my job without my team. I think this is not about me. This is about a team of over 40 people behind me, no pun intended. It is like a very dedicated team of people, and they make this possible. And on the other hand, we also have our community gardeners. We have over 20,000 volunteers dedicated to the land and doing the work 365, 24/7. They are stewards of the spaces like day and night. So I thank them. I think I wouldn't be able to do this without them.
So I really love the parallel history of the Green Thumb and Citizens Committee for New York City. You know, when the government turned its back on the citizens of New York City, we didn't just, you know, go to a corner and mope. We decided to roll up our sleeves, pool our resources, and, you know, 40 years later, we are still going strong. And long life to New York City Parks Green Thumb, and long life to Citizens Committee. May we continue fighting the good fight, and may we continue as a people pooling our resources and looking out for one another. And I'm now going to turn it over to our invited community members to ask questions of you. So if I can, you know, call on my programs team to help in fielding some of those questions, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. So what we're going to do, if you have a question, I see LD Smith has their hand raised. So if you can raise your hand, there's a reaction button at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. What I'm going to do is put you on the spotlight and ask you to unmute so that you can ask your question. Yeah, get those hands raised, but also feel free to put things in the chat. LD, I'm gonna spotlight you so you can ask your question.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Greetings and blessings. Thank you for your time. I had a question. I'm a small business WMBE here based out of Brooklyn. So as you guys can all see, all of this space in the back.
We're losing your video a little bit, LD.
This gardening, my super, or what?
We lost your video a little bit, but we were able to see your backyard. We can hear you now.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. So my question was, I would like to propose to the city or boroughs to allow our citizens to be back there and utilize the land for food and gardening, and to kind of create a green building spaces, because a lot of the jurisdiction of the city, for example, all of these supers who own these buildings, they want to cut costs. I'm in a 6 apartment or less building. No one cleans the building. And I've been here since 2018. So all of these loopholes that these people have found out of greed, I would like to help push back with the citizens of New York and really, you know, care for the building. Sorry, guys, my mom was calling. My mom was calling, sorry. Oh my God, I can't. So that was my question. If you guys can maybe give information or help guide, because also the lots, you know, that are being sold to these, you know, building companies for $1, and then another building goes up. I would like to start the conversation with the city of New York or the right people to say, hey, you know, my dream is to own 14 lots that are vegetation based and flower based and taken and cared by the city, so everyone can come in. It's 24 hours open. And I really believe, because I'm a believer of God and Christian based, that, you know, if we build it, the people will take care of it, especially New Yorkers, because we're awesome. So I feel that's my question, like how or can I partner with somebody to, divulge more into the idea of making lots in these boroughs that can grow food and sustain and take care of the people also in the back of the buildings if it's too much.
Thank you, LD. I can answer that. So I can give you some ideas. So first, Green Thumb helps neighbors like you to identify those vacant lots. So that's the process is in our website, and we can help you with that. We specifically work with neighbors to identify city-owned land, and if it's city-owned land, there's a path that we can follow and help you, and then help you with your neighbors. So the idea is to build community around that space. So yes, there's a path forward for that. When we're talking about private property, is a different story, but I think there are examples that we can see privately owned spaces transform into community gardens. There are models of the community land trust, for example. There are also nonprofits dedicated to that as well, like New York Restoration Project. An example of a land trust is the Brooklyn Queens Land Trust as well. So we're happy to guide you through that process. There's a process for that. And I see that Dee put a link in the chat, how to start a garden. Thank you. So yeah, there are different avenues. So depending on the jurisdiction of the lot of the land, there are different pathways, but happy to assist you in that process.
Okay, so I'll get your information after the conversation. Everybody will email, or you're going to put your info in the chat?
I can put it right now in my email.
Thank you so much. God bless. Thank you, everybody. God bless New York.
Thank you.
Thanks, LD. And those are some great questions. I just wanted to jump in there because we will send a follow-up email with contact information, both for Citizens Committee staff as well as for Green Thumb. So thank you also, Carlos, for putting that in the chat. Just wanted to say that if you are on private property or in a building, Citizens Committee can work with you to do some project planning assistance to start a tenant association and applying for grants to try to make a community green space happen as well. So we have some good partners in the room for that type of support. Any other questions? Please raise your hand and I'll put you in the spotlight.
I see a question about NYCHA Gardens. I can answer that. Eleanor is asking about support from Green Thumb with NYCHA Gardens. So actually, we have a really exciting partnership with NYCHA. We are supporting 50 gardens within the next 3 years, 50 gardens in 50 developments. And Green Thumb will go there, rebuild the space, and provide ongoing support. So to make sure that the garden is eligible for this type of support, please contact me, and I'm happy to guide you through that process.
I was scrolling through the chat. There was a question about help with soil. Carlos, I think that's the one that you just addressed.
Correct.
All right. All right. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. We have our expert with us today. While he is here with us, definitely get your questions in. Don't be shy. Raise those hands. And we will definitely have him answer.
Crystal has a question about rooftop gardens. Unfortunately, rooftop is a different category of gardens. There's a challenge of public access to rooftop gardens. And as you can see, that's why our program is part of the Park Department. The idea is to offer publicly accessible open spaces. And the idea of having a rooftop, it's a challenge. We are happy to provide some other resources. How can other groups have been supported, like rooftop farming? And then the other part of the question is about schools. Yes, there is a partnership between NYC Parks, Green Thumb, Department of Education, and Grow NYC with the school gardening program. I will put the link in the chat.
And while Carlos is putting the link in the chat, I believe there is a feature to download and save the chat. So I definitely encourage everyone to do that so you can capture these links and all of this other good information that is being shared today.